Hi, Randy, the mobile home guy here again today. Today we're going to talk about servicing your furnace, like the fall time service, how that looks, and maybe some of the filter types, maybe some of the different types of furnaces, and we're going to go through a bunch of different ones today, I hope, and we'll see if we can't get you kind of acclimated to a few different ideas of what servicing that looks like. Okay, so this is one of the major furnaces in a mobile home. You'll notice it has a big top door and a small bottom door. This is an Intertherm furnace or a Nordyne furnace. You'll know it a lot by its little latch right here. So you just turn the latch sideways, kind of let it out a little bit, and then lift the door up. So I know we didn't be able to see that too well, but that's how we get the door off of that one. And then we can see the whole inside of the furnace this way. So on this particular furnace, there we have the gas valve, the inducer motor, the pressure switch, and there's the circuit board and things. There's some thermostat hookups. Right there is the on and off switch. Over here is the model number. And this is the main blower that we're going to be dealing with today. We need to take this off and clean it out. Right to the side there's a big motor. You can see over here there's a big blower motor. And there's some squirrel cage or a big fan blade that blows around and blows heat down into the ductwork, into the floor of the home. So we're going to want to take this off here and clean that out. That's what the major servicing on these models are. So we'll look at how to do that. Okay, so on this Intertherm furnace, we're going to see that there is a plug right here. So let's move that out of the way. Right here, there's a plug that needs to be unplugged. So two little tabs on the side of that. So if you look, just squeeze right here and here. So right here and there, just squeeze those, lift straight out. And also in the back here, that's why I got this bright flashlight, there's a screw right at the top. Let me see if we can set this down. And we're going to point right at it. That little screw right there needs to come out, okay? It looks like on this one it's a 5/16. Sometimes that's an old Phillips head screw, but that one needs to come out. And on the newer models, also down beside here, they'll have one in the back. And we'll look at that. Most of them don't. Some of the old M1Ms do not have that, but the newer ones, there is a, maybe that's a little too bright, sorry about that. So on these models, right there's another screw that needs to come out, okay? So that screw needs to come out, another 5/16, and then we'll look at that. Okay, so I have this long screwdriver. It telescopes. It works really well because it's pretty far back in there where that screw is at. So we just kind of extend this with a 5/16 on the tip of it there. Sometimes it'll be a Phillips head on this particular furnace, this Nordyne. So this is either a M1M or an MG1, all Nordyne furnaces on that brand that looks just like this. So there's one here. So of course we want to make sure we turn off the unit. So there's a power off switch right there. Now we've unplugged it. We're going to reach in here. We're going to get this one back here. Okay, so we'll take this screw all the way off. Okay, and then there's one up here in the top over there that we need to get to. Okay, so this one's a little rougher. So now is when we need to hold the unit. So we're kind of holding this with our arm right here. Okay, and then this screw comes all the way out. Okay, and that's it. Now this thing is ready to fall out. So again, I wanted to make sure we've unplugged the power here. We've turned off the power. We've unplugged the little plug in there. And we've taken out both screws. Only on the MG1 is there two screws. The M1M only has a screw up there. And if you look really carefully, we'll look at that in a second. What we're going to do is we're going to lift up a little bit and pull sideways and then out, okay? So then this whole thing comes out. And this here is what we need to blow up. We need to blow out all these things here, all the little louvers there, and all of the motor, everything. And I get a little brush and kind of brush it as I do that. I get an air compressor outside and kind of brush it all off, and then we'll look at how to do that. All right, so with our air compressor, we got a nozzle here, just a little air hose. So we're gonna get our little brush here, and we are just gonna go at this thing with all that we got, just to try and get as much of the grime and everything we can off of it. So we'll look and see what that looks like. So I'm just gonna put in a little earplug here. So we're going to get all of and this is a great tool to use. Keep this handy and just go all over. Okay, we're going to flip it over. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to grab a little brush. I like these little wet wipes in a little container like this. We don't really want to spray cleaner in there. You can, but then just usually what we want to do is, if we're going to use a cleaner and some paper towels, spray it on the rag, let it soak in, and then start wiping down. But what I'll just come in here and I'll just kind of start coming out everywhere I can. This is a good thing about this little brush. It gets where nothing else can, kind of thing. So then we'll just kind of start wiping it down everywhere we possibly can. Of course, wiping down first, because all that stuff will get to the floor. I do get a lot of questions, like what are these things here? These little pieces here, are they filters? No, what they are is they're actually designed to stop the noise vibration. So these are not filters. The air comes through here so fast, because that's where it's all coming through, is the top of the furnace. Air comes in this way here, and these keep the sidewall right here from rattling. So that's all that is. So again, we'll just kind of finish cleaning this one up, and then we'll get it really super clean, and then we'll look at maybe the next part of service in this furnace. So. Alright, so we got it all cleaned up, so now we're just going to put it in here on this big furnace here. This one's kind of a little rough, so we got to put it in sideways, push it all the way over to the left here, like that, and then over and down. So you'll see that once you get it in there, and then we're going to put the screw in the top, the screw in the bottom. Again, that's why we got this big long piece here, so we'll put this one over here in the top first. Kind of a pain if that's a Phillips head, so I know you probably can't see much there. Alright, so here we go. That one's all in there. So now we can kind of let her rest there. So we'll put our other one in on the bottom. And again, if it's an M1M furnace, this one doesn't have this bottom screw in here. This is kind of a newer thing here. So tighten that up, and then don't forget to plug her in there. There's only one way this plug can go in, so you can't get it backwards. So pop that in there and click it in there, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Alright, so part of the service that we want to do on your furnace is we also want to see inside the heat exchanger, which is behind this plate. There's two ways we can do that. One is we could take all this plate off, we can take the valve off and that sort of thing, or there is a plate down here that we can take off, and you can get access to look up at that heat exchanger through a little plate there if you don't have air conditioning, because that's right where they put the air conditioning. So we're going to imagine today on this one that there is an air conditioning and we can't get through it on there, and maybe on the next one we'll look up and see what that looks like. So what we're going to do, make sure your power is still off, and then we're going to disconnect these two little wires right here. Okay, and then they don't matter which side they go back on, doesn't matter which way they go on here. We're going to disconnect your plug right here. And if you're on a flex line, if your gas valve here is on a flex line, and this will be pretty easy, so we can just kind of move that over to the side. If not, in order to get the valve, you'll have to disconnect this pipe if it's on a hard pipe. But this one being on a flex line makes it kind of easy for us. So we'll take these two little screws off here. It's holding on the bracket, so we can see that this just comes basically straight out, and we can see that this little bracket is what holds it on there. Now this one thing we want to look at is this orifice right here down inside of there. We want to check and make sure that's all clear. So you can take this off. Sometimes it's a 7/16 or a ½ inch, so you take that off and look down there. Sometimes spiders will crawl in there. That's a really good thing to check while we're doing this today. So now we're going to hold this, and we're going to take the rest of these screws off of this plate right here. So on this Intertherm furnace, we're going to kind of lift the back end up, so we're going to let the top fall a little bit, and then we're going to pull it straight out. Because we can see on here, here's the igniter. So here's the whole burner assembly. They call this the burner assembly. And so of course gas comes in here, comes out here, hits the igniter, ignites, and then hits this here, the spreader plate, and that's where you get your flame there. So right now what we want to do is we want to put that to the side. And we're going to look inside of there. We're going to feel inside there. We're going to lift in here, and we're going to lift up and make sure that this plate up here is doing okay, and make sure it's not falling down. We're going to shine our flashlight in there, make sure there's no cracks, and make sure the side doesn't have any big warps or anything, or that it's not really super rough in there. So no matter what, you are going to see rust in there. It's going to look like rust. So that is normal because you're pulling in outside air that has a little bit of condensation in there. So we're going to check all that, and when we find that okay, we're going to seal her back up. Okay, so we checked everything. Everything looks great on this furnace. That's great. So we put it all back together. Okay, so now we're just going to turn it on. We're going to watch the flame inside of here. So we're going to turn up the thermostat. We're going to turn the power back on. We're going to make sure the flame is doing well. And then we're going to go through the sequence of operations, and then we'll be done. Okay, so we've turned the power back on, the thermostat is up. So the first sequence of operations on this furnace is that the inducer motor, or the combustion air motor, starts pulling in air from outside on the roof, and then it proves that how much air it's getting through this little pressure switch. And then what happens is it'll turn on an igniter inside of this hole here. And all of these will be, you'll know that that's working correctly, and that it'll have a bunch of different clicking sounds. So I heard it click on to thermostat come on, and it clicks on now that the igniter comes on. So if we look close, we'll be able to see in there that it's starting to glow. And this is if you have the ignition type. So if you have a piloted type, there will always be a flame in there, but on the ones that have automatic igniters, you'll see that it'll start to glow in there. And we'll wait for a few seconds and let that glow. And then the next thing is you'll hear the gas valve come on, and the flame will come on then. Okay, and then it'll start the timer for the main blower to come on and start blowing into the house and heating up the house. So let me kind of bring you in a little closer here so we can see. On this particular furnace here, it has these lights in here. So there's a red light and a yellow light. So the red light just means power, everything's on. Steady on is everything is okay. That yellow light there, or green light, tells you that the flame is on at this time. So everything's good on that. We want to see a nice big flame. So we see a nice big flame there, and yellow towards the tip. So blue towards the center, yellow towards the tips. That's a good flame. So now we can hear the main blower coming on. If you are having any problems with that, you probably won't have any yellow. If you have a flashing yellow, that just means that the flame is not a very great flame. We'll need to look at that. And if you have a flashing red light, so no yellow and a flashing red light, it'll tell you all the sequence right here, what's going on with this particular thing. Okay, so everything looks good here. So we'll turn the thermostat back down, make sure it goes off, and we'll be done with this one. One of the main things I guess we would want to talk about is cleaning the filter. So on this here particular furnace, the filter actually attaches to the back of the door. So we would want to take this outside and make sure to clean that all off. Okay, so another major thing that I like to do and make sure is to have one of these handy testers to make sure all the combustible gas is tested for. Make sure nothing's leaking there. So I will like to test everywhere around here. Everything is going on good with the valve. The entire line, especially this is a hard line, there's going to be a few different fittings there. Okay, so we're going to make sure that the fittings here are doing okay. Everything looks good on that. And then of course there's going to be a shutoff somewhere inside, or supposed to be a shutoff within sight of the appliance. Okay, and make sure everything tests well on that, okay? Looks like everything's well on that. Okay, looks like this furnace is doing great. Alright, so this is a different type of furnace. This is a Coleman furnace. This is a DGAA furnace. So this furnace door is a little different. This one just kind of pops out, two little tabs there, and it drops down a little bit. Make sure to hold this little bottom so the filter doesn't fall out. Back of the door there is where the filters are. Alright, and we're going to, again, service this unit. So we're going to remove this housing up here. First thing we want to do is turn the unit off. Okay, and we're going to unplug the little power cord for the motor. It's right along the side here, so we can see that that's there. And this one here has this little screws right along the side where it just slips straight, and the other one kind of fell out. This one kind of slides in and out this way. So one there, and then there's one right here. And we'll do that really quick. We'll take those two little screws off, and they're 5/16 screws. We like to have this big long extension there with a 5/16 on each end of it. Okay. Okay, we'll set that to the side. We'll grab the cord, kind of hold it up top here, and we'll just kind of pull it straight out. Kind of just slides right out. And this is all there is to that. And we can see the little runners right here. If we look right up at the furnace, we can see right where those slide into there. So those just slide right in and slide right out. On this one, there's a little bit different than the other one we looked at. So there's 3 different wires here that go inside. And so 2 of these are an igniter, and 1 of these is a flame sensor. So the yellow one is the flame sensor, and we're going to make sure that gets hooked up exactly back to the flame sensor wire. So you might want to mark these ones here. This is for the igniter. Those ones don't really matter which way they get hooked up. So we're going to disconnect these after we've probably marked them. So, and then the flame sensor here, disconnect that. Set those over to the side. These ones here, these 2 brown ones, those are power for the gas valve. Those ones don't really matter which one. If I got those wrong on the way back in, that's okay. So we're going to take those off to the side, and then we're going to take all the screws out for the gas valve here. Again, 5/16. So we're going to get a lot of 5/16 here. So if this one's on a flex line, this will work great. If the gas line is the flex line there, not hard piped in, and then this just comes straight out. And again, if we turn it forward, we can see there again, that's the orifice. So that's the size of gas that comes out. So we want to check that, make sure there's no spiders in there. So we can set this to the side. And now we're going to hold the bracket with one hand, always, so it doesn't fall when you take all the screws out. Once you get the screws out. Okay, this one just comes straight out. And we're going to turn it around and look at this here. So right here we have the igniter. Here's the yellow wire going to the flame sensor. So if you get failed ignition on this, sometimes just clean that flame sensor really well with a little bit of some sandpaper or something to that. Be real careful not to touch the igniter. If I went like that to the igniter, it would break. So don't touch it or anything, so be real careful with that. So again, this is the burner assembly, igniter, flame sensor, spreader plate, and all that works together just like all the rest of them do. So now we're going to check inside there and make sure everything's okay. Okay, so on this DGA furnace, they have the filters on the back of the door. So usually mobile home furnaces have the filter on the back of the door. It's good to know that the air on the furnace comes into the top. So it goes into the furnace, into it. So if I had it this way, the furnace air would come into it this way. So we want to make sure when we do change these filters, on the side there's going to be a little arrow, and it's going to say air flow. We want that pointing towards the furnace and away from the door. So most Coleman furnaces take a 16 by 20 by 1, and there's 2 of them, both one in the top and one in the bottom. And we'll change those out and or clean them really well and put it back together. Okay, so here's a different type of furnace. It's an mmhb, different type of setup here. Basically, they're kind of starting to probably look all the same. Same basic idea, turn the power off, unplug here, okay. And then on this one, there's 2 screws in the front, so we'll take those off. 5/16 again. It's either a 5/16 or a Phillips almost all of the time, so pretty straightforward. We're gonna take 2 of those screws out. This one just sits flat there, so we're gonna move the cord out here, hold it up there, kind of move, make sure these get out of the way so you don't get those hooked on there. Pretty straightforward. So then full access. Okay, so we have an mmhb, and to get there, we're going to need to get this valve off or replace this valve. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to take all of these screws off here, and this one right here, and we need to take this pin out right here. Do you see that? So we'll also need to disconnect a few things. So first off, we make sure that the power is off up high there, and we're going to take the 2 power to the gas valve off here, and it doesn't matter which way those get put back on. And we're going to disconnect the igniter there. So pretty straightforward. And then what we're going to do is just grab something to pull this open like. So we'll pull this out right there. So you can see this pin comes right out of there. And right here, this one right here is a 1/4 inch. So this little nut right there will come off first. Okay. And then this comes straight out, so we kind of wiggle it a little bit. Make sure you don't get this caught there, kind of put that to the side, and just kind of pull it out. And again, we have the orifice there, and we can check for spiders and things in there. So if we were going to replace this valve, of course, now we just take the connectors off, reuse this, put it all back together, and do the opposite of that. But we're going to look inside and check that heat exchanger while we're at it. So now we're going to switch to a 5/16, and we're going to take all of these screws off here. Okay, and here's the last one there. We're going to hold with our hand here, kind of some pressure so it doesn't fall down when we do that. When we take it out, then we're gonna kind of give it a little pull and kind of tip it, kind of that end up a little bit and kind of let it come straight out. If we look, of course, here's the igniter. Here's the blower tube there and the flame spreader, so all of that looks okay. And then we're going to examine inside there, make sure that looks okay. And if we were going to change the igniter, we would just take that little screw off there, pull this plug back in, and then redo that, put a new one on there, put that back on there, and put that back in, and push it back in. So we'll Okay, so here we got a different furnace. It's a Coleman furnace, and usually it's a Coleman furnace and we have two equal-sized doors. So we see two equal-sized doors usually means Coleman. This is an older Coleman, presidential. This one here, you just kind of lift this top door off here, and see inside of here we can get to this, the blower right here. So we're going to turn the power off. Just for if you're interested or not. If you're interested. If you're interested, the model number on these guys is down here. Usually down there, we'll see the model number right here. So that's what we're looking for, those ones. What we want to do, we turn off the power and then return it off. And then we're going to pull the plug here. This one, on this plug, it has two thermostat wires going into the plug. So we'll need to trace that down to two thermostat wires here. We'll disconnect those, just pull those off here, okay? And then we'll pull these up out of there. So now the plug is free, we can see. And then these have two little wires coming up here and back there. There's a limit switch. So we'll just kind of reach back here, make sure we've turned the power off. We'll just pop those two little tabs right off of there. And now we're looking at trying to get to the screws. So there's some screws here. And then we can see on here also there's a couple of screws on the side of this one. So we're going to take the ones off here. Okay, and then we're going to hit this one. One more on this side. So really what we're looking for is, this is sitting in a bracket, it's sitting on these two little runners under these tabs. So sometimes there's screws on the sides here and sometimes there's not. Sometimes this little plate isn't here. It actually, there's just a face that comes straight down. There's two little screws here and then it comes right up. But look along the side here and right in there. And then once we get all those out, we've disconnected the plug here. We're just gonna grab the plug and then this comes straight out and then we have it in hand. So ready to go. Okay, also on this model of Coleman furnace, and on really any furnace that's for a manufactured home, so here's the overall furnace, but down here is the part for the A coil for the air conditioning. So this is always hollow if you don't have an AC. So the best thing you can do if you can't get inside here. So for instance, this one here has a hard pipe and on the valve. So we want to pull the valve out and look inside to see the heat exchanger, but we can't do that. If we could, but I just don't want to go through disconnecting all this, potentially causing a gas leak when we try to put it back together, having to shut it off, relighting the pilot and all those kinds of things. So what we can do is we can pull this panel off right here. So there's several screws all around the side right here, and we'll take those off, and then we'll just be able to pull this panel off and get inside of there and just look up, and we'll be able to see the heat exchanger from there, and we'll be able to tell if there's any cracks from the outside of the heat exchanger. Okay, so this might be a little rougher, but we took off that front panel. We can see we took the panel off. We can see down there, that's the duct connector. Goes down into the ductwork and into the home. We're going to try to get it so where you can see up if we kind of do this strategically. So we want to be able to look up at the heat exchanger, so that's going to be a little bright. And so let's see if we can kind of jostle us around a little bit here. And if we look up, there we can see the heat exchanger. So if we look very carefully, we can try and see all the way around this thing, and we can try to look for cracks that way. So here, of course, is where we're looking all around there, all around the back and all around the side, just to see any cracks in the heat exchanger. Okay, so we finished up on this one. Looks like what you want to do, of course, is clean the filter. You want to make sure to take those out, clean them, get them back in the right way. We've taken the blower out and doing all the things to do that. We've taken that outside and cleaned it up. We've checked it, made sure that there's no gas smells or anything. Any smells, of course, are the bad things. We've checked to make sure there's an operation, how it comes on and goes off just perfectly fine. And that's really all there is to servicing this unit. Now there's some in-depth things you can do with testers and things to make sure everything's working perfectly primed. But if you're just a regular do-it-yourselfer, you can just pull those out, clean them up and put them back together, and then make sure that all the operations are good in the sequences that we talked about. So everything should be fine on that.